Welcome to the Finding Your Purpose podcast. My name is Monica Hohe. I'm a psychotherapist, conscious coach, and someone passionate about helping people take steps towards living with clarity and purpose. In my own journey, I followed a non-traditional path from volunteering overseas, working with the homeless, to social work, psychotherapy, and when my children were small, launched the Good Food Initiative to support families and their health. We are living in a time of great change, and with it comes the opportunity to help create something new. I believe that when we find our own unique purpose, we not only live with greater satisfaction, but also contribute meaningfully to the world around us. In this 6-part series, I'll be speaking with individuals who are aligning with their purpose and are an inspiration to others to find theirs. I hope the conversations in this podcast encourage you to find yours. Today, I'm delighted and like to welcome Máirín Murray, founder and powerhouse behind TechFoundHer. TechFoundHer ignites women founders to progress and grow tech ventures by providing the network, the know-how, and the capital that too often passes them. She's a self-proclaimed fire starter and a strong advocate for equity in the tech startup system. She's on a mission to drive 1 million women worldwide to start tech ventures. So thanks, Máirín. I'm delighted to have you. I first met Máirín at a Women in Business in Dublin event. And at the end, Máirín stood up, and it was the beginning, I think in February of 24, was it? Where you were launching this new organisation, movement, something like that, new organisation called TechFoundHer. And I'm not a techie person, but I was so impressed with this woman's energy and passion and purpose. And I've been following her on the WhatsApp. What did you call me just now?
A lurker.
A lurker. I've been following her, the WhatsApp group, and I cannot believe the energy in that WhatsApp group, Máirín. It's really quite incredible. So thank you. I'm delighted to have you. So tell us a little about your own story and how you got to this place where you are in leading this organisation, TechFoundHer. So how did you get here?
Gosh, there's lots of steps, lots of twists and turns.
Yes.
I was looking at something on LinkedIn and someone was saying, okay, careers and lives are never straightforward. They're never like once you do one stage and then you do a next stage, then you do a next stage. There's definitely been a lot of spirals, upward spirals, downward spirals, scribbly, messy bits in the middle, messy bits at the start and the end.
Yeah.
So things are never straightforward in terms of how you end up somewhere. But I suppose you can look back, and it's often when you look back on your life, you can see the threads and you can see it looks like there was a plan all along. But really, that's only looking back on it, I suppose, that you can see, well, actually there are threads there, for sure. So I mean, in terms just a very short history, because I have, as I said, had lots of twists and turns, but in terms of some of the career things that I've done, I actually studied philosophy at university. I think very much I was somebody as a teenager who was looking for my purpose, looking for the meaning of life. I was always kind of, I was brought up in a house with two parents who were teachers, but there was always a lot of discussion, a lot of critiquing, a lot of debating, and I suppose that was something that intrigued me from a young age, was looking up the stars and just seeing the vastness of it all. So I always had this kind of sense of wonderment in terms of what is our place in the universe, what is the meaning of our lives. So I always had that. I always had that sense, I suppose, from a young age, and I ended up doing philosophy. So which was it was a bit of a twist. I studied like maths, physics, chemistry for my A-levels, but the thing was, I didn't know why. It was because I was good at them. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't for any other reason. People like saying, "Oh, do the science subjects, and then you can keep your options open." That was kind of the idea at the time. But then when I was coming to choose my career in terms of what would I do at university, I was totally clueless. And for some reason, everybody seemed to be saying, "Go and study law." Now, I don't know why that was. Looking back on it, I think to be honest, it was something I was brought up, from within the kind of nationalist community. And to be honest, I don't think we had the STEM role models as much as from, the kind of, the community, the community that built the shipyards. That was very much, I'd say, the other, I'm not into two communities because I believe we're one community. But I think looking back on it, the school that I went to, the people that my parents knew, there were very few. I don't think there was any. There were no engineers. There were no very few even doctors. I think there was one doctor in the wide circle. So I think everybody seemed to be saying, "Oh, you became a lawyer or maybe a journalist." So anyway, so I was going to do. So there were two options. So I actually ended up going to do to Oxford for the exams in terms of, to the entrance exams. And again, I was totally clueless. I went along. I thought I was going for the option where you didn't have to do an exam. So I ended up on the Friday night. I always like to have a bit of a good time. So I was just all like, socialising, hanging out with everybody. And then I looked at the notice board where I was at the college. I applied to St. Catherine's because supposedly that was the easier one to get into. It didn't have a tradition of private schools or whatever, or public schools. So I thought this was the one to go for. And then I looked in the notice board after not partying, but just out socialising. And I was like, oh, there was an exam actually on Friday evening and I missed it. So that was a great start. So anyway, so I didn't get into Oxford, but then I was going to, because what I would have loved to have done, looking back on it, would have been physics and philosophy. I think that would have been a really cool combination. But then I ended up doing philosophy at Trinity.
But then we're only at
the very beginning of the story. But anyway, I better speed up a bit. So then in terms of other paths along the way, then I ended up working in the arts for a few years, and it wasn't for me at all. It was all kind of, applying to the Arts Council for funding. Maybe you'd get it, maybe you wouldn't get it. I didn't find it that creative or that dynamic an environment. And I was kind of like, I kind of missed, I suppose. I missed the more kind of creative and not scientific, but that process of learning, of doing things that were a bit more kind of challenging. And basically, I kind of, at this point, I suppose at that point there was kind of something coming in called Web 2.0, digital technology, and it kind of appealed to me. So it was something then that I kind of ended up doing as a master's at Trinity, and that's how I kind of ended up going back onto that kind of more tech STEM path.
Great. So even though you're saying that sort of you inadvertently perhaps lost your way, you missed that exam, etc., it does seem that and you said it, when you look back, you can see the threads, like with the philosophy and the discussions at home and looking out at the sky and the stars and wondering what it was all about. So it does seem that looking back, Máirín, that you're actually noticing that actually you were on a path. And you're also saying something important that often I would say in my groups, that it's important about what you say no to. And you said no to several things on the way. And it's only by saying no to what you don't want, well, then you sort of move towards what you do want. And it seems that that's one of the messages that's coming across already from what you're saying, is that you try different things, but once you realise they weren't for you, you put them to one side. So, and this TechFoundHer now, what is it? An organisation, a movement? What is it?
Yeah, so TechFoundHer, so it started, I guess, as a community. So I set up Tech for Good Dublin along with Ellen Ward, and that was basically a community of people working in technology, working in not-for-profits and activisms and charities, a whole mix. The whole idea was everybody was welcome in the Tech for Good community. And the idea was, how can we harness technology? This was maybe 8-9 years ago. How can we harness technology for a purpose? How can we use it for, to kind of, to make a positive impact on the world around us? So I suppose at that point, there still are, all the big tech companies were in Dublin. So all the big tech companies were in Dublin. Loads of people were arriving, just fresh off the boat, to work in the big tech companies. And a lot of them found their way to the Tech for Good community as well. Because the interesting thing is, even, sometimes if you've got a day job and maybe the day job pays very well and you're using whatever the skills are, you're still looking for that purpose and you're still looking for that to give back. And so the Tech for Good community, I said, was that whole mix of people who maybe were looking for a side hustle, maybe people who had a full-time day job, maybe some people who actually had studied, technology or engineering, and they were maybe spinning something out of a university. But the whole focus was, how can we use this incredibly powerful tool, which is technology, to make a positive difference on Dublin, the city we live in, the Ireland, kind of the world, and how can we really learn from each other and inspire each other? So rather than, everybody thinking, oh, I'm sure there's something I could be doing with the tech, this is so powerful. It's, it brings people together, it allows you to scale, it allows you to automate, so I think it's that whole power of community, something that really became manifest, I guess, during the Tech for Good community. It just became so clear to me that there is such a power in collectives, there's such a power in that mix of people, mix of ages, mix of backgrounds, learning from each other, sharing, showcasing, all the informal conversations, all the informal, supports that people give each other.
And how did this get into TechFoundHer then?
Yeah, we'll get there. We're getting there, but I know we'll get there eventually. And also I was kind of involved with a group of women who were going to the Web Summit. So there was an informal group of us who were going to the Web Summit, and we set up, I'm not even sure now, I think it was Magda set up this group, which so that we'd all kind of know each other. I think in terms of women, there's safety in numbers. It's more fun if you're in a pack rather than going to a conference on your own. So the idea was that we would all go to the Web Summit together. And that became a very informal kind of women in tech type group. So I became very aware in terms of even in the tech for good space. Myself and Ellen, we were both very committed to diversity and inclusion. So we're both women. A lot of our speakers and the founders that we showcased were women in the group. Anytime we had an event or a workshop, there's a real mix of people. And then but people started saying to me, "Oh, this is strange. Why are women coming to these events? Women don't go to tech events." This is, so it was always like, I was getting these comments made to me that, "Oh, this is unusual. This is not the usual way." And I was kind of like, well, it seemed completely usual to me, because it was kind of like, well, of course, women are interested in making impact in the world, and tech is a tool. If that's the angle that I come at technology from, I'm not like super excited about technology for its own sake. It's more how it is a tool and how it can support. How it can support impact. So basically the TechFoundHer, I just kind of realised there was a need there for really kind of a collective and a group that was very much focusing on women kind of growing and starting the tech companies, working on working beyond the initial kind of ideas. But actually, that's the way I kind of think, I guess we can have the biggest impact, because the biggest impact we can have is when women in technology, women in STEM start their own companies, create their own cultures. Our leadership our leaders, but also have the power. And I think with some women in STEM initiatives at that time, there were a lot of kind of chapter-based, US-based organizations that were promoting women in STEM, women in tech, but it was really promoting women to apply to the big tech companies or the other big corporates, to work in them, to stay in them. And you're kind of like, well, yes, that's good, well and good, but you're going into a hierarchical, patriarchal system that you haven't designed, and that quite often women don't thrive in. So for me, it was so much more radical if we had women actually starting and leading their own tech companies. And that's when I started kind of looking into this and realized that there was a huge gap. And I kind of thought, well, look, let's fill that gap.
Fantastic.
Let's start something in Ireland. Let's start a movement in Ireland that goes global, rather than waiting for some chapter-based organisation in America to set up a group here. Let's start something here that has the potential to go globally.
Fantastic.
And have a big
and
impact.
It is a movement. And is this your job? This is
Yeah, it is.
I've
been doing this. Yeah, I've been doing this full time. So TechFoundHer started. It's a limited company It actually was just by accident. It was Valentine's Day, the 14th of February,
2024.
So it's an easy date to remember. But so it's now because there was just such momentum. It needed that formality in terms of kind of growing.
And so, it's great to hear you talk about those values. Building community, diversity, inclusion, the whole feminist agenda of supporting women to move forward in what had been a male-dominated environment. And so as you talk, we can all hear your sense of purpose. Do you feel that and know that for yourself, that you're so purposeful? As I say, when I listened to you at this Women in Business thing, I thought, I don't really know the language, but my goodness, I can see the energy and the sense of what she's about, that you really knew what you're about. And do you feel that in yourself? You must recognise that as a very purposeful individual.
Yes, but again, I would say, Monica, that I haven't always been purposeful. Sometimes I lost my way. Sometimes I ended up doing day jobs, which drained the life out of me.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, and so I think having I suppose it's an evolution to get to the point where you say, okay, hold on. When you have the courage, I guess, and the commitment, the vision to realize, yes, I can do this. Like for years, I wanted to start my own company. I always had that kind of leadership piece, and but for years, I was like, oh, maybe I'll save another few hundred, a few thousand. Always finding excuses for not going for it. Maybe I'll wait on my day job until, I don't know, some sign from the universe. I remember even listening to some podcaster I used to listen to, and he was like, oh, if you're waiting for a sign, this is the sign, go for it.
Yes,
and even that wasn't enough of a sign for me. So I think a lot of people are in that position where you're the self-doubt, that there's more, that you feel that sense of this, that this is not fulfilling, I guess, your vocation or, your life's purpose, but there's always that sense of like, oh, am I ready? And that's
the kind of thing that when I work with women's group, and I work with creative entrepreneurs and groups and women, ambitious women, and those kind of things all the time come up about self-doubt, the imposter syndrome and so on. But, and I think what you're saying is your journey has been you haven't always been clear that you're in the right place, but you've kept going and then starting to notice the threads. Then now you're quite clear, actually, I love this. I can really make a difference here. This is my piece of the jigsaw. I think almost that's another way for describing purpose. What's my piece of the jigsaw? And I think the other thing is I've discovered, Máirín, is that it can change. What your purpose is in your 20s might be different in your 40s or your 60s. And that's okay too. And you do need those qualities like trust and courage and patience, perhaps, support, all of those things to actually hit on a place that's okay for the moment, and certainly more than okay. Your movement is thriving from what I can see. And I mean, do you have any comments on that? What is the relevance of purpose? What is the big deal? Do you agree that maybe it is really helpful if more and more we can find what we're about?
Of course. Because to be human is to want to create. It's to, want to make some kind of impact, Steve Jobs said, some kind of impact on the world. Creatives would say the same, so there is that sense, I think, as even like young children, they're playful, they're making things. And often we lose that.
Exactly.
And it's almost like then we have to kind of unlearn. So I think in our maybe 20s or 30s, we're kind of unlearning the restrictions that we kind of we inherited from our kind of, from our the educational system or society. So there is that whole thing of unlearning, and to realise, and also getting rid of all the stories. There's so many narratives that fill our heads, oh, this is what you're meant to do. Oh, if you're academic, you have to do this. These are jobs are, more valuable than other jobs. There's so much, kind of like garbage in, garbage out that we have to almost like kind of free ourselves from. It's almost like the onion. Like I used to do loads of yoga, and it's almost like the onion. You have to unpeel those layers from you and kind of really get back to your kind of essential self, almost like becoming that kind of like childlike curiosity. And that's when you find the kind of wonderment again, I think, is when
Fantastic,
you have kind of peeled off all those kind of layers of all the baggage, I guess, that you kind of gather.
Absolutely. And as you probably know, that I do feel that that's what we're going through as a society, that more and more people are seeking to find who they are, what are their strengths and what are they here to do. And the women who come to TechFoundHer, what are they looking for? What are the themes that you might notice? Is it that lack of confidence, or is it just sort of know-how, or what would be the general theme or pattern for those people who are coming to join you, apart from the imposters like myself, whatever you called me?
Not at all. No, I don't like the narrative in terms of women lacking confidence. That's a narrative I would never kind of go along with.
Right.
Because I think we all have confidence, especially we all have confidence when we're all kind of hanging out with each other. When women are together, there's no lack of conversations or connections or sharing or encouragement. Yeah. So I don't think women lack any confidence at all. I think it's more, it's more a systemic change that's needed. And that's very hard. Like, it's very hard to change systems that are ingrained in terms of, unconscious bias, in terms of structural bias. That is very, very tricky. In terms of the women in TechFoundHer, I suppose the message that I would have for everyone is the kind of go for the moonshot. It's like, the Dr. Tamara Carlton has this fabulous book, Building Moonshots. And that's the big message is, go bigger, go bolder, in terms of that vision and in terms of that purpose piece. Yeah. Because I suppose what I realised is at a certain point in my life when I was kind of like, what is holding me back? I had the savings in the bank. What I realised, it is the mental piece. It is it's ourselves. So you realise that the biggest challenge is our own perception in terms of, sabotaging ourselves. There's a beautiful quote, which I love, which Marianne Williams said, which is the whole thing about, it's not, what we fear, it's not our darkness, but it's our light. Yeah. And I think you really have to kind of go into that and kind of say, well, look, you have to be aware that what holds us back is often ourselves. Absolutely, and that's the biggest battle. And it's even when I talk about, bias, the challenges that women have in a patriarchal world and in a world that was designed by men. At the same time, we have to realise that often our biggest battle is with ourselves. And that's where if we move forwards kind of authentically, boldly, knowing that the power is to be ourselves, I think that's where we can have real impact.
Fantastic. And so the women that are coming to you are benefiting from that support that you're offering as a community and as a source of information. I often see information shared on the WhatsApp as well. And you're saying, actually, women don't lack confidence. And I suppose I know what you mean when people come to me as a psychotherapist, they say, I'm really lacking confidence and etc. And I say, and you came here. And so you're saying, I think what you're really saying is that innately we do believe in ourselves, but there's been a lot of knocks and bangs on the way that have actually got in our way of fully expressing who we are. So yeah, I think I would agree, but often it's hard for people to know that actually they are innately confident. But so you're sort of providing a platform where people can come and grow and learn and step up into tech jobs or tech entrepreneurial projects.
Yeah, absolutely, Monica. So it's tech entrepreneurship. That's very much the focus. And the focus is very much about learning by building, learning by doing. Yeah. So like with TechFoundHer, the whole message is you don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be a techie to actually start and lead a tech company, to harness the power of technology. Yeah. That is something that's open to everyone. And again, it's realizing what are those narratives that are holding us back, that we've maybe that we believe. I mean, I know myself. I mean, I worked in the BBC across multi-platforms, developing with amazing teams of designers, software engineers. My coding, I learned a bit of coding when I was at Trinity through the Masters in Computer and Multimedia Systems. I never used the Python coding or the Java coding, how to code a calculator. That wasn't the thing. So a lot of it's having a product vision, knowing what you want to create and why you want to create it, falling in love with the problem that you want to solve. And so with TechFoundHer, a lot of it is actually because a lot of people, not just women, a lot of founders have not ever created or launched a platform or a tech product before. So it's just that experiential learning the first time you do it. So with TechFoundHer, the focus is very much, let's get building, let's get creating it's called a minimum viable product. Let's get creating a clickable prototype. Let's get it out there.
It's all beyond me, but
it's making something. It's basically you building and making things rather than writing a 10-page document. It's actually let's get starting making, because it is a creative process as well. And so it is. So with TechFoundHer, that's really our focus is let's get founders, let's get women building, making products, learning, failing fast. You try something, it doesn't work, you get feedback from somebody you think who's going to use it. But the women are incredible. Like I don't know if you were Monica at the recent summit that we had at the Mansion House.
No, I didn't make that episode.
Yeah, but it was incredible, and we had a new initiative where we had these breakthrough awards where we had founders. Who some of the founders who, they were talking about they were awarded because they made such incredible progress over the last 6 months, and their purpose is unbelievable. You've got Victoria Finlay with the Menopal, and she's kind of redefining what it is in terms of support for women who who are going through the menopause. Like incredibly driven, incredibly passionate. You've got women like Shelley Cohen, who's focusing on disability, focusing on making travel accessible for everyone, regardless of their disabilities, called Travelese. An amazing founder, Claire Brannigan, who's focusing on psoriasis and how to support.
And you have supported these women to come forward and create these initiatives.
Yes, TechFoundHer is part of it, but it's them. They're the ones who take the full credit. TechFoundHer is part of their journey, but it's absolutely the women. It's a privilege to be part of it, and it's also that community. And there's so many other communities as well, like TechFoundHer. There's a lot of other fantastic women in business communities. You've got Paula Fitzsimons going for growth. In terms of Awaken Hub and Awaken Angels is amazing. Women in business. You've got Network Ireland. So it's very much about how we can all support each other.
And so for anyone listening then, Máirín, how might they find their own purpose? Any tips? If someone's listening, think, she sounds great. She really knows what she's about. She's very purposeful. How am I going to find my purpose? What would your tips be?
I think, first of all, it's just realizing when you're excited, becoming self-aware to know when do you feel deflated energy-wise. Like at one stage, I remember I was doing consulting work and I had a call with a client, and literally after the call my energy was going from 10 to 0. So you have to be aware of the things that drain the life out of you, in terms of energetically, and the things that really make you excited, curious, feel alive. So it's having that kind of awareness in a very simple way to realize what is it that makes you feel alive. Because as you said, Monica, when you have that energy, when you have that enthusiasm, you're kind of like in the flow, and things, there is a momentum and people do respond to you and things go well. So the key thing is to absolutely find that and do it, and even, look, you may not be in a position to do it full time. You may not be in a position to do it as an entrepreneur, but start doing it as start it as a side hustle, start it as a weekend, something you do on a Saturday morning, but find what you love what you do. And again, that is a privilege that I know I have that privilege to do that. But that's what I would encourage everyone to do, is really, because it's about being alive. You feel alive when you're doing something that's purposeful. And again, it's not that you have to start a tech company, even though of course I love everybody to do that. But it's and it's basically not even starting a tech company. It's not about the tech. It's about the big ambition the big impact, that feeling that we can, that we can move society forward.
And would you agree that it's a zeitgeist now? It's in the ether. This is coming, that the millennials and the Gen Z are all, I think we've gone beyond the materialism of society. And my hope and what I see is that more and more people are wanting to do something that's makes sense to them, that's not as, more meaningful to them, that it's more satisfying, it lines up with their skills, their strengths, it's more satisfying. I see that coming, I think, and lots of people that come to me are sort of bored with the high-paid, high-powered job and looking for something more. Do you see that with the people you're meeting?
Well, yeah, no, completely. I mean, I suppose in some ways, I've been a bit like that, always like this,
Yes.
So in a way, because I suppose a lot of it is to do with, like, for example, my dad, he was an artist, so we were brought up in a very unconventional way.
Yeah.
So I always, so that's always been something that I've been very much focused on from a young age, is that sense of, creativity, purpose, not being,
Wonderful.
not about materialism at all, but that was kind of like my dad, he used to, at one stage we had Ladas, I don't know if you remember those cars.
Yes.
The Russian cars, whatever. Yeah, they were never into material possessions or what things looked like.
I see. So there was an environment that you grew up in. I think we're probably quite similar. I did the maths, physics and chemistry A levels too. And I remember one time my mother said to me, Monica, you're very good at making something from nothing. And I think that's what creativity and entrepreneurship is. But so thank you, Máirín. And I also was very touched by a LinkedIn post that you did recently, about your leadership. And because to me, you're never mind all your tech abilities and your ability to create community, and you seem to be a natural leader and a natural marketer and natural branding. I mean, you have so many other qualities that have all come to the fore with this organisation, this agency that you have set up. But you were very honest then about the difficulties for you in being out on your own, leading, and, that it's hard to change and you need support, essentially, is what you were saying. And I think you got support from that post as well. So I just thought, fair play to you. You're still honest and true to what you believe in and what you stand for. So well done. I don't know, was there any comment on that? I thought that was a very honest LinkedIn post that you...
No, but you have to keep it real,
Yes.
Regardless if you're going to share it on social media or not, we can't get caught up in our own egos and our own stories of, how successful or how cool am I or how everybody...
Absolutely,
You can't. Things go in waves. It's even like Tech for Good. At one stage, Tech for Good was... Everybody was talking about Tech for Good. It was kind of, the flavour of the moment, we worked for awards. I did a TEDx, whatever else. But things come in waves. And the point is, you have to be... We all have good days. We all have bad days. We all have challenges. Everybody, being a leader, it is lonely as well.
Lonely and hard at times.
It is, of course it is. And I suppose that, and that's where you kind of have to really lean into. And that's why the TechFoundHer community is so amazing, because there's so many other people and they know it. They know the roller coaster of leadership and of having a venture of your own. But the thing is, I always say is, and it's very simple, I just say to people, just keep going. because I know even like people, like years ago when I worked in the BBC, people who stayed there and kept going are now running the place. Do you know? So in life, a lot of it is actually just sticking with it. And I suppose early on in my career, I was saying about all the chopping and changing. I didn't stick with it. I kept chopping and changing, which is not the best thing. So what I would say to anyone is, on that path or whatever that path is like, keep going, stick with it.
But if I can add to that, but also to say no, what's not for you, to be discerning, we have to be able to say no so that we can step into what, so I'm sure you agree with that too, that it's keep going, but also, you don't have to say yes to everything.
Gosh, no, absolutely not. But it's that's the trick, isn't it? It's kind of like the
discernment and listening in.
Discernment, yeah. It's a bit like, the hero's journey, that whole story about the hero who goes out on their quest, to have, to find their way in the world. And there are all these twists and turns along the way, which I love. And, I love that whole metaphor of the journey. But yeah, there are twists and turns. You lose your way. I suppose one of these kind of myths is that you will give up just before you reach the Holy Grail. Yeah. So the key thing is when to keep going. As you said, the discernment piece is, it's tricky. It's like magic, isn't it? There's no easy path to knowing that.
Listen, thanks very much, Máirín, for telling us a very interesting story. And I'd say we're only halfway there or less, aren't we? There's lots more to come anyway. But tell me, if anybody wants to get involved, you're on LinkedIn, and do you want to say a little bit how we could find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can, I said Máirín, people always misspell my name, so it's probably easier to find TechFoundHer.
Yes.
So that's TechFoundHer. So we have a website, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're all over the show. So TechFoundHer, if you Google TechFoundHer, get in contact. We're launching a platform very soon, so you'll be able to actually formally join the platform. We have we've all sorts of initiatives in terms of moving along. You can go from zero to tech hero.
So listen, thanks very much for coming in, Máirín. Great to meet you now finally.